Today we are talking Thanksgiving. I'm going to share with you some of our family's favorite Thanksgiving recipes, but in small batch form. Holidays can be especially difficult if you're cooking for a reduced size family. So if you are celebrating small this year, these recipes are for you. Hi, I'm Leanne from YourHomeBasedMom.com. Join me in the kitchen today as we make small batch recipes with big taste. All right, so today we are making 5 different Thanksgiving recipes. Now, all of them except one of them can be found in my Thanksgiving ebook for 2, which I'm going to link to down below. And there's, in addition to what we're making today, there are 6 more reduced size Thanksgiving recipes in that cookbook. And in there, I also teach you how I give you a time schedule so that you can have everything ready all at the same time. So let's cook. Okay, we're going to start with the turkey. For our reduced size Thanksgiving, I always make a turkey breast because it is the perfect amount for the 2 of us with just enough leftovers without having to eat leftover turkey for weeks. One problem this year. You can't find a turkey breast in the store, and in fact, they are predicting a shortage of turkeys all around. So get your turkey early. So today, because I couldn't find a turkey breast, we're going to use a whole chicken. But you can use the same recipe, the same process, and almost about the same cooking time with this roast chicken as you can with a turkey breast. Now today, we're going to make it in the crock pot. I like to do my turkey breast or my chicken in the crock pot because it frees up my oven for all of the sides. But in the ebook, I do give you directions for cooking it in the oven if you prefer. But today, we're going to do it in the slow cooker. So with our chicken today, now the most important thing with your turkey breast or your chicken is you make sure that it fits in your crock pot. I typically use about a 3-pound turkey breast. Today, my chicken's about 5 pounds, so it's a little bit bigger, but I already tested it out. I can get in there and my lid will fit on. So we are going to prepare our little butter and herb mixture that we are going to put under the skin and over the skin of the, if I say turkey or chicken, you know, I mean, either or. We're going to take 2 tablespoons of butter, and it's softened, and I just kind of smashing it up here. We're going to add in a teaspoon of minced garlic. You could also use a teaspoon of garlic powder if you like. The thing with when you use actually minced garlic, you will find that they do brown a little bit, especially if you're doing your turkey in the oven. So if you don't like the look of the browned pieces of garlic, go ahead and use garlic powder. We're going to add in a tablespoon of kosher salt and about a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. You can use a little bit more pepper if you like pepper. And then we are going to add in some herbs. Now, I've got some fresh herbs from my garden, so we're going to use that. But if you don't have fresh herbs, go ahead and use some dried herbs. Just use half amount of dried herbs as you would the fresh herbs. I've got about a tablespoon here of fresh chopped herbs, and I'm using oregano and some rosemary today. And this is smelling yummy. All right. So we've got all that combined, and we're ready to prep our chicken/turkey. We're going to take it, and we want to loosen up the skin just with your hands. Just kind of get it in there. We are going to wash our hands really well when we're done with this. Don't worry. And just to loosen it so that we can take this mixture. But first, remember to clean out all the little treasures that are inside of your chicken first. And then I'm just going to take some lemon wedges for a little extra flavor and stick them in there. So we're going to take our butter mixture. I'm going to wash my hands now. I'm going to wash them afterwards. Just take half of it, and we're going to just lift up that skin and smush it around in there so that it kind of just gets a nice little butter coating in there, and that flavor is just going to cook right into the chicken. Now, when you take your chicken out of the bag or your turkey breast, make sure you rinse it off really well. Like I said, clean out the insides, and then you just want to pat it dry with some paper towels before you do this. All right, and then we're going to take the remaining half and we're going to spread it all over the outside of the chicken. Now, I also on my blog, if you prefer, and if your chicken, the drier your chicken is, the easier this butter is going to spread on here. I could probably be a little drier. But if you want to cook this in an Instapot, I'll put a link down below on my blog. There is a recipe for doing a whole roasted chicken in an Instapot too. So you've got your options of either an oven, a slow cooker, or the Instapot. Just kind of depending if you've got 2 ovens and you have room for your chicken or your turkey in the oven. I do find that the skin tends to get a little bit browner and crisper, but I'm going to show you a way at the end here how you can crisp up the skin if you're using the crock pot or the Instapot. Okay, there we go. We're gonna wash our hands. We're ready to put our chicken / turkey breast into our slow cooker. Now, we don't want it to sit on the bottom of the slow cooker because it's gonna kind of sit in all those juices the whole time. So I've just taken an onion and just chopped it into big wedges, and we're gonna kind of use that to set our chicken on. Now, if you wanted to cook some vegetables along with this, you could put in some potatoes or some carrots too. But I'm just gonna end up throwing these onions away, and so we're just gonna put them in there. We're gonna lift our chicken right into the slow cooker. You don't have to add any liquid in with this because it is going to produce enough juices as it cooks. We're going to add our lid, and then we are going to cook it on high for 4 to 5 hours, or on low. No, I'm saying this the wrong way. Low for 4 to 5 hours, or high for 3 to 4 hours. You want your chicken in the chicken breast area to reach about 160 degrees, and then let it rest for a few minutes so it comes up to 165 degrees before serving. Now, we'll get it started. My favorite part of Thanksgiving dinner are the rolls. Now, the rolls we're making today are light and fluffy, delicious, and we're only making 4 of them. So you're not going to be tempted to eat 2 dozen rolls. Now, learning to make small batch rolls was pretty much life-changing for me, and now I'm able to enjoy a dinner roll much more often than I was before because I'm only making 4. These rolls take just under an hour to make, but if you need something quicker, make sure and check out my small batch 30-minute dinner rolls right up there. We're going to start by proofing our yeast. We're going to take 1/2 cup of warm milk. Now, if you need to use water, go ahead and use water. We're going to use our thermometer to check the temperature, and we want to make sure it is between 105 to 110 degrees. We're going to add in 2 tablespoons of olive oil. How much yeast is it? We have for our sugar, we are using a tablespoon of honey, but you could also just use sugar if you'd rather. We have 1/2 tablespoon of dry active yeast. We're going to go ahead and stir that together. Then we are going to let it sit until it's nice and foamy and bubbly. So to mix up our rolls today, we are going to use our stand mixer, but you could totally do this by hand if you don't have a stand mixer. So we are going to add in our flour. And I'm going to use 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. And then we will add in how much is this? 1/2 teaspoon? 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then our yeast mixture. And you can see how nice and beautiful this is, all bubbly on top. It's ready to go in. There we go. And then we are going to mix it up and let it knead. Now we want it it's a slightly sticky dough, but not so sticky that it sticks to the sides of the bowl. So if you need to add a little extra flour in, go ahead and add a little extra flour in. All right, so it comes out of the bowl nice and clean. It's still slightly sticky, but I also like to then just put a little flour on my counter and just knead it a few times by hand if I've done it in the mixer. You just want a nice, soft, smooth surface to your dough. Then we're going to take it and we are going to just cut it into 4 equal pieces, or as equal as you can get them. All right, and then we're going to take each piece, and I just like to flatten out my dough a little bit like that, and then just fold it, fold it, fold it, fold it. And that just forms a nice little round ball of dough. Now I'm going to bake mine, and this is a 6-inch cake pan. Just going to spray it a little bit, but any small pan will work. And we're just going to pop that in, and we'll just repeat the process with our other pieces of dough. Flatten it out, and fold, 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 fold. And then we are going to cover them, put them in a nice warm place, and let them rise for about 30 minutes. Right, our rolls have risen. They about doubled in size. We are just going to add a nice little egg wash to the top. It just makes them a little prettier, but this is not necessary. Now, the recipe calls for baking them in a 400-degree oven for about 12 to 15 minutes, but if you want to bake them at the same time, what's one advantage of these small batch recipes is the dishes are smaller, so you can fit more things in your oven at one time. So if you want to bake them at the same time you are baking your stuffing and your sweet potatoes, go ahead and put them into a 350-degree oven. They'll just take a couple minutes longer to bake. Up is our stuffing. Now, ever since I started making this particular recipe, which was probably about almost 40 years ago, my family refuses to eat any other stuffing. In fact, when we go to a family members or friends for Thanksgiving, my children always insist that I take the stuffing when we go. Now, this stuffing is a little drier maybe than you might be used to, but then you can just add in some extra gravy to make it the consistency that you like. The other thing I love about this recipe is this is one that is easy to prep a day or two ahead of time. Pull it out when you're ready and pop it into the oven. Now, let me tell you, this stuff is good. I have been known to just eat stuffing and not even bother with the turkey. We're going to preheat our oven to 350 degrees. Now, I like to use a cornbread stuffing. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard to find those, so if it is, just use the regular seasoned herb dry stuffing mix. This is 6 ounces of stuffing. Also, you can prep ahead of time. I have got some brown rice that we're going to add in, and I used a half of a cup. Is that what I used? A half of a cup of brown rice that I cooked, and a cup and a quarter of water. Now, if you never made brown rice before, it does take a little bit longer to cook than regular white rice. This took about 25 minutes to cook. The other thing we've got is I have browned up some sausage. Now, this is just Jimmy Dean sausage that I bought in the roll. This is 8 ounces of sausage. You could use, if you have a favorite sausage, if you want to spice it up a little bit, you could add a spicy sausage. And then the other thing we have is we have a half of a cup of onion and a half of a cup of celery that we sauteed in 2 tablespoons of butter. All right. Now we're just going to add all of these ingredients together and add that in. This dressing, because of the rice and the sausage in it, it really is a meal all to itself. So good. And then that brown rice that we pre-cooked. And you know, my bowl is getting a little full here. So I am going to transfer this into a bigger bowl before I add in the remaining ingredients. That way I won't spill it all over when I stir it up. All right, so this recipe this is actually half of what I normally fix for our family. So this makes a little bit extra stuffing. You will have leftovers of this, but that, I promise you, that is not a bad thing. Like I said, this is a meal in and of itself, so you could just eat this for lunch or dinner or whatever the next day or so. So now we are going to we have a cup of chicken broth, and that's what we're going to use to dampen it. You just want to stir it and just so it all just gets damp. We don't want it wet, just damp. We're ready to put it into our container. Now I'm using 2 smaller containers. You can use one bigger one, but you know what? I just might share some of this with somebody else. So each of these containers holds about 2 cups. You just want to make sure that it is oven safe. And we are just going to make this easier so I don't spill it all over. We are going to pop it in. And then I like to kind of push it down a little bit and get a little bit more in. And then we're going to fill up. I'm still getting it all over the counter. All right. So at this point, you could cover it with some foil and plastic wrap, put it into your refrigerator a day or 2 ahead of time. Now, when you're ready to bake it, you're going to pull it out. Now, if it has been refrigerated, just know it's going to take a little bit longer to cook, to come up to temperature. But everything is cooked in here already. So basically, all we're doing is heating it through. Now, when you put it in the oven, it's going to cook for 30 minutes. It's going to start to get nice and crispy and crunchy around the edges. That's my favorite part. But if you think it's getting too brown, just go ahead and cover it up with some foil for that last 5-10 minutes of baking time. So our dressing is ready, and we're on to the next dish. Now, you can't have Thanksgiving without sweet potato casserole, can you? So I'm not really sure if you can call this a side dish or dessert, because we're going to use sweet potatoes combined with butter and brown sugar and cinnamon and orange juice. Our family's been making this recipe, again, for years, and this is what really converted me to sweet potatoes. So I've taken our family's favorite recipe, I've reduced it down to feed 2 to 4 people, and you're going to be glad there's a little bit of leftovers. All right, so this is another great make-ahead dish to help make Thanksgiving Day easier. You can make this a day or 2 ahead of time, just like the dressing. Keep it in the refrigerator, pull it out, and bake it before serving. I am going to use canned sweet potatoes, all right? But if you want to use an actual real sweet potato, you can totally do that. Just peel it, cube it, and then you need to cook it so that it's nice and fork tender. You can do that in the microwave or however you like to cook your sweet potato. But I'm making things a little bit easier for myself. Thank you. Need my wooden spoon. And I'm using canned sweet potatoes. I've got 1.5 cups of sweet potato in here, and I'm just going to mash them up. So if you're cooking your own sweet potato, just make sure that they will nice and soft, and they will mash right up. We are going to add in 1 egg, a tablespoon of brown sugar. We have a tablespoon of melted butter, a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, And I'm going to put in a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then get all that mixed together. And then we're going to add in just enough orange juice. So we don't want them too runny. So you're going to, it's kind of a lot of it's going to depend on how your sweet potato and how much moisture was in them. And you can, if you like chunky sweet potatoes, go ahead and leave chunkies. I prefer mine, texture issues, to be a little bit smoother. And so then I'm just going to add in the orange juice. This is more for flavor than anything. So I'm going to add in about a tablespoon probably, because these sweet potatoes are pretty wet. All right. Got that all mixed together. And then we are ready to put it into our baking dish. I'm using this dish. It's about a 2-cup dish. So anywhere from between a 2 to 3 cup baking dish will work just great. And we're going to pour it in. And then we're going to add the very best part. So even if you think you don't like sweet potatoes, I think this recipe is going to change your mind. All right, now at this point, if you're making it ahead of time and you were going to refrigerate it, this is when I would cover it and stick it in the refrigerator. Then right before you're going to bake it, we're going to take a 1/4 cup, get that out of there, of brown sugar, and just crumble it on the top. This is where the dessert part comes in. All right, it's going to kind of bake down in, so I know it looks like a lot, but trust me, you're going to be glad. And then I'm going to take about 1/3 cup of pecan halves, and then I'm going to decoratively just lay those on top of our brown sugar. Then, last thing, we're going to take a tablespoon of melted butter and just drizzle that over the top. Can't ever have too much butter, huh? All right. So these are ready at this point to go into the oven, 375 for about 20 minutes or so, 25. Again, you just want them heated through. You can actually stick this in the oven right along with your stuffing and bake these two right together. Now, one thing we haven't made is mashed potatoes. And I know mashed potatoes are pretty much required for Thanksgiving, but in that ebook down below, you're going to find my recipe for small batch mashed potatoes as well as gravy. There's also a small batch recipe for cranberry sauce to put on your turkey, a small batch reduced size salad. That was the hardest thing for me to learn how to make in reduced size. And 2 dessert ideas. We've got pumpkin pie for 2 and apple crisp for 2. But we're going to make one more small batch dessert for you here because my husband's favorite for Thanksgiving is pecan pie. So we're going to make small batch pecan pie. So next to pumpkin pie, what says Thanksgiving more than a pecan pie? And personally, I would take a pecan pie any day over a pumpkin pie. But if you love a pumpkin pie, make sure you click up here for my pumpkin pie for 2 recipe. So this pecan pie for 2 has all the same flavors of your classic full-size pecan pie, just in smaller size. We're going to use 2 5-inch pie tins to make our 2 individual pecan pies. Now we are going to make our pecan pie with a shortbread crust because I prefer shortbread crust and I think it's easier than a pastry crust. But if you love a pastry crust, go ahead and use a pastry crust instead. Click up here for my perfect pie crust recipe. Okay, we are going to start. Shortbread, of course, is like basically a combination of butter and sugar. And so I have a 1/2 cup of softened butter in here. Just use the back of my spoon to kind of smash it up. Then we are going to add in a cup and 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. I always have to check my numbers with my trusty assistant over here. We've got 1, 2, and if you wanted to make, if you don't have 2 5-inch pie tins, I'm going to link to them down below, but you could use a bigger, smaller pie tin, but it's not going to be enough to fill, obviously, a full-size pie tin. Then we're going to add in some powdered sugar. This is going to make that nice texture to the shortbread crust, and we are adding in 4.5 tablespoons of powdered sugar. 2, 3, my house is smelling so good, just like Thanksgiving. And 4, and again, this pie you could totally make ahead. It'll keep great. I keep it in the refrigerator though because it does have egg in it. You want to keep it in the refrigerator, but make it a day or so ahead of time and it will be delicious on Thanksgiving Day. Now we are going to add in a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder and about 3/4 teaspoon, you know me, I just added in of vanilla. Okay, then we're going to mix this together and you're probably going to have to use your hands to kind of get this to come together. and we're ready to put it into our pie tins. All right, it's all mixed up. All my dry ingredients are gone, and we're just going to take it and divide it between our two pie tins, half in one and half in the other, and then just press it into the pie tin along the bottom and the sides. All right, they are done. We are going to pop them into a 350-degree oven for about 8 minutes just to bake them a bit so that they just begin to start to turn golden brown. We're going to bake it again with the filling in, so don't over bake it here. While our shortbread crust is baking, we're going to go ahead and mix up our pecan pie filling. And for that, we are going to use 2 tablespoons of melted butter, a 1/4 cup of corn syrup. Now, I am using light corn syrup. You could use dark corn syrup if you want. It'll just give your pecan pie a little bit richer, deeper flavor. The corn syrup is really important in the pie because it prevents all your sugar from crystallizing, and it gives that pecan pie that nice gooey texture that it has. All right, then we're going to also add in some granulated sugar, and I have 1/3 cup of sugar here. We're going to add in 1 egg. We're going to I think it calls for, I got to double check. My trusty assistant isn't here today, so I'm figuring this out on my own. A pinch of salt and about a 3/4 teaspoon of vanilla. All right, there we go. Then, of course, we're going to put in some pecans. Now, I'm just using straight pecans out of the bag. If you want to toast them for some deeper flavor, you can totally do that. You can do it in a 350-degree oven for about 6 minutes. Just watch them so they don't burn. Or you can do it in a frying pan on the stove top. You can also chop them up if you want, but I like putting them in just whole. So we are going to pull out our shortbread crust now. We don't have to let them cool. And we'll fill them back up and back into the oven. So, like I said, the shortbread crust, you're just going to bake them until they just kind of start to set. It's almost like a par baking. The middle may poof up as it bakes. That's okay. When you pull them out, they're going to sink back down in. And then we're just going to take our filling and try to eyeball it as close as you can, half in one and half in the other. And try to make sure you get as many pecans in both of them as you can, because it has a tendency for the gooey stuff to kind of come out first. So make sure you're getting eyeballing an even amount of pecans. All right, there we go. All right, then these are ready to go back into our 350-degree oven, and we are going to put them back in there for about 25 to 30 minutes. Thanksgiving dinner is ready. We have the perfect amount of food for 2 to 4 people, 2 people if you want some leftovers. We've got our beautiful chicken that we cooked in our slow cooker, but it also can be done in the oven or the Instapot. If you do it in the slow cooker or Instapot, you're going to want to put it on a baking sheet, pop it under your broiler, and crisp up the skin, because the skin will not get crispy or turn brown in the Instapot or slow cooker. We've got our delicious stuffing that is the only one my family will make. It's crispy and brown around the edges. Our sweet potato casserole, our homemade rolls. How amazing do these look? And then our pecan pie. Now, the only things we're missing here, we're missing our small batch mashed potatoes and gravy, cranberry sauce, a green bean casserole, and a salad, which you're going to find all those recipes in my Thanksgiving for 2 ebook, which you can purchase down below. In addition, I have a recipe for pumpkin pie for 2, which you can find up here, and an apple crisp for 2, which you can find up there. And both of those are included in the ebook too. So, hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for joining me in the kitchen, and I'll see you in the next video.